All right, let's dive right in. We are going to tackle the science of life itself, biology. This is a field that tries to answer some of the absolute biggest questions you can think of, starting with the most basic one of all.
It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But it's actually one of the deepest puzzles in science. I mean, you know a horse is alive and a rock isn't, but why? What's that magic ingredient, that invisible line that separates all the living things from the non-living?
Well, it turns out trying to define life in just one sentence is incredibly tough. But what we can do is identify it. Biologists have figured out a set of common characteristics that all living things share, whether it's a tiny little bacterium or a massive blue whale.
And what's so amazing is that these 7 rules apply to everything. Every living thing is made of cells. Every living thing needs energy to survive. That's its metabolism, kind of like the engine that keeps it running. And everything alive works to keep a stable internal environment. That's called homeostasis. It's how your body keeps its temperature right around 98.6 degrees, no matter if you're in the blazing sun or a snowstorm. These are the fundamental rules of the game of life.
And the science that studies all of this, that's biology. The name literally just means the study of life. It's the whole framework we use to make sense of every living organism and all these properties we just talked about. So, how do biologists actually figure all this stuff out? How do they solve the mysteries of the living world? Well, it's not just guesswork. They have a really powerful, structured toolkit for asking questions and finding answers they can trust. And the heart and soul of that toolkit is the scientific method. It's not just a boring list of steps, it's a whole way of thinking that helps us turn our curiosity into actual, verifiable knowledge. This is the classic playbook for scientific discovery. It all starts with just noticing something, an observation. That sparks a question, like, why does that happen? From there, a scientist comes up with a possible explanation. That's the hypothesis. And then they design a test or an experiment to see if they're right. Based on what they find, they make a conclusion. And then, and this part is absolutely crucial, they share what they've learned with the rest of the world. Now let's be super clear about what a hypothesis is. It's not just a random guess. The key word here is testable. It has to be an idea that you can actually design an experiment around to see if it's right or wrong. If you can't test it, it's not a scientific hypothesis. Simple as that. For most of human history, a huge part of the living world was totally invisible. We needed a major breakthrough, a brand new tool that would let us see life on a scale we couldn't even imagine. And this discovery didn't happen overnight. It started way back in 1665 when a guy named Robert Hooke looked at a thin slice of cork and saw these little box-like structures he called cells. A few years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, with his amazing homemade microscopes, became the first person ever to see the tiny living things swimming in a drop of pond water. He called them animalcules. Can you imagine? It was a revolution. But it still took another 150 years for scientists like Schleiden and Schwann to put it all together and realize that all plants and animals are made of cells. Today, of course, our tools are unbelievable. We've got light microscopes, which let us see living cells in action. But then we have electron microscopes, which use beams of electrons to get way, way more magnification. That's how we can see things as incredibly tiny as a virus. And with that, the secret was out. The microscope proved that all life, no matter how big or small or complex, is built from the same basic block, the cell. Okay, so finding out about cells was huge, but it was really just the beginning. The next big step was figuring out the universal rules that govern every single one of them. And that brings us to the cell theory. This is one of the absolute cornerstones of biology. It's 3 simple but incredibly powerful ideas. 1, everything that's alive is made of cells. 2, the cell is the most basic unit of life. And 3, every new cell has to come from another cell that already existed. Now, while all life is made of cells, not all cells are built the same. Life is basically sorted into 2 major models. You've got prokaryotic cells, think bacteria. They're simple, they're small, and they don't have a nucleus. Then you've got eukaryotic cells. These are the cells that make up plants, animals, fungi, us. They're bigger, way more complex, and they have a true nucleus to keep their DNA safe. So we've got this mind-boggling diversity of life, all built from cells. The next massive challenge for biologists was, how do you sort it all out? How do you create some kind of order out of all that beautiful chaos? The guy who stepped up to this epic task was Carolus Linnaeus. He was an 18th century Swedish botanist, and today we call him the father of taxonomy. He came up with a system for classifying life that was so good we still use the basic idea today. His most brilliant move was a two-name system called binomial nomenclature. By giving every single species its own unique two-part scientific name, like Homo sapiens for humans, he created a universal language for biology. Now, a scientist in Tokyo and a scientist in Rio de Janeiro can talk about the exact same animal, and there's absolutely no confusion. His system works like a biological address. It starts really broad, with the kingdom. For us, that's Animalia. Then it gets more specific, phylum, class, order, and so on, narrowing it down at each level until you get to one single unique species, Homo sapiens. Linnaeus' system laid the groundwork, and it's been updated since. In the 20th century, a biologist named R.H. Whitaker suggested organizing all of life into 5 main kingdoms, which you see here. For decades, this was the standard model for sorting out the major branches on the tree of life. So let's do a quick flyby. First, you have Monera. This is where all the bacteria go. Then there's Protista, which is kind of a mixed bag of mostly single-celled organisms. Next up, fungi, your mushrooms and yeasts, which get their energy by absorbing nutrients. Then you have Plantae, the plants, which make their own food using sunlight. And finally, Animalia. That's us, the animals, who have to eat other things to survive. So, from figuring out what it even means to be alive, to uncovering the cell, to organizing millions of species, it's been an incredible journey of discovery. But here's the thing, it is not over, not even close. As our technology gets more and more powerful, especially with our ability to read DNA, the real question becomes, what new, hidden kingdoms are we about to discover next? What else is out there just waiting to be found?